Mark was a college student living in rural Indiana. His house sat quietly beside a patch of woods. During the day, it felt peaceful, but after dark, the woods gave the place a strange, uneasy vibe. Behind Mark's house, under the patio, was a hot tub. And that's where everything took a turn. It was Saturday night, March 29th, about 12:30 a.m. Spring break was wrapping up, and classes were about to start again. Mark had invited 3 of his closest friends, Kyle, Keenan, and Derek, for one final night of hanging out. They were in the garage playing pool, blasting music, and drinking beers. The night felt perfect. Everyone was in a good mood, laughing, and having a great time. After a while, Kyle suggested they hop into the hot tub. The chilly night air made the idea even more appealing. Everyone agreed. They changed into swim trunks, grabbed their drinks, and climbed into the hot tub. The warm water felt amazing against the cold air. They joked, talked, and lost track of time, until they heard something. It was the sound of twigs snapping, like footsteps, coming from the woods. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like a person. They all froze, scanning the tree line. Keenan tried to brush it off, saying it was probably nothing. The others laughed nervously, trying to shake the tension. They cranked the music louder and kept talking. About 10 minutes later, a man emerged from the woods. He stepped into the patio light. He was wearing a long black trench coat, white sweatpants, and a gaming headset. His eyes were wide, and his face looked empty, emotionless. Everyone jumped. They shouted at him, asking who he was and what he wanted. The man raised his hands and said his name was Seth. He said he was 33 years old and heard them laughing, so he came over to join. The guys exchanged confused looks. Mark told him to leave, but Seth didn't budge. Instead, he started stripping. First his coat, then his shoes, then his pants, until he stood there in just his underwear. Without a word, he climbed into the hot tub. Nobody knew what to do. Mark pulled out his phone and started recording. Not for fun, but because it felt so unreal. He captured footage of Seth sitting there like it was normal. They began asking him questions. Where he came from, if he knew anyone there. Seth just repeated that he heard them laughing and wanted to hang out. Then, out of nowhere, he said something horrifying. He admitted to molesting a child. Everything changed instantly. The group scrambled out of the hot tub, yelling at him to leave. They pulled him out of the water. Seth didn't resist. He just stood there, dripping wet, staring at them. Then, without a word, he turned and slowly disappeared back into the woods. The guys rushed inside, locking every door and window. Some of them nervously laughed, trying to make light of it. But Mark and Kyle were on edge. They had a feeling it wasn't over. After about 15 minutes, Kyle said they should go back out and lock up the hot tub. Mark agreed. They grabbed flashlights and stepped outside. That's when Mark spotted something near the hot tub. A phone. He picked it up, and the screen lit up. Whatever was on the lock screen made him drop it immediately. He didn't say what he saw, only that it terrified him. Mark said he felt sure Seth would return. They raced back inside and told the others. A few minutes later, they heard tapping at the window. Mark already knew who it was. He pulled back the curtain, and there was Seth standing there. His skin looked ghostly pale, his eyes wide, and he had a disturbing smile on his face. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared. Mark yelled for Kyle, who came running and called the police. Mark grabbed a baseball bat and stormed to the front door, yelling at Seth to leave and take his phone. Seth said nothing. Instead, he calmly walked around the side of the house. Mark followed cautiously and peered through the patio window. Seth was standing there again, silently watching. Mark warned him the police were on their way. Seth didn't react. Instead, he slowly lifted his hand and gave a single wave, then turned and wandered back into the woods. Police showed up a few minutes later. They listened to everything and searched the woods. They found Seth standing alone, just staring back toward the house. They arrested him for trespassing. It felt like the nightmare was over. But a few days later, Mark saw something that made him rethink everything. A girl who lived nearby posted a video on Snapchat. It showed another man, not Seth, trying to break into her house late at night. That's what haunts Mark the most. It meant Seth might not have been alone out there, and whoever else was with him might still be around.